welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. This is the Dharma Toolkit Part 2 or extension from the Dharma Toolkit Part 1, where Miffi explains all the things we've been asking questions about in our mind when we're in the Sangha. So thank you very much.
This is great. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, welcome. Good evening to all those wonderful people overseas in America and Great Britain. And good morning to those of you in Brisbane. How wonderful. And Tupten Nobu Ling, thank you so much for hosting me. So we're on, it's actually class 5, which is on prostrations and outrageous offerings. So how do we actually embody our devotion or embody our Buddhist principles? How can we learn how to do a prostration without having superstition, the discomfort that comes from superstition, existential discomfort, just feeling self-conscious and silly? How can we do prostrations with humility and with joyfulness? So we're going to have a look how prostrations unifies body, speech, and mind together. And when we have those three, you know, the sum is greater than the parts. It's a very powerful way to practice and a very powerful method of purification. So let's start this morning as we normally do with setting our motivation. So just a very informal motivation with curiosity and kindness. So that's the two wings of the bird that Venerable Robina always refers to in her wonderful teachings. So the kindness, we can always be kind, setting a gentle heart to listen, being kind to yourself, especially with practice, to doing our practices and embodying our practices. We need to encourage ourselves, not berate ourselves. So still being, you know, firm and disciplined, but with a kind heart, a kind attitude, including to oneself. And then in the spirit of curiosity. So without trying to understand everything all at once, because that is a big ask. If we could do that, we'd be pretty much almost enlightened, right? So it's a process. And the thing is with curiosity, we feel okay about not knowing things, and with anticipation in finding out more. So it's a very nice way to set our mind, you know, really nice and focused, but also with a altruistic heart, thinking that we're going to learn these practices because we want to be able to focus our own Buddhist practice. But why? So that we can quickly help ourselves and all sentient beings. So we can become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So with that motivation, I'm just going to get our screen share up because we're looking at prostrations. And I'm not sure if any of you have seen prostrations or if you're really familiar with it, or you probably have your own prostration practice, or you may even have done the hundreds and thousands, the 100,000 prostrations. But let's just start at the beginning. Prostrations are like greetings. So we've got all types of greetings in the world, don't we? We've got the Maori greeting, the hongi, where you touch your forehead and your nose, even to royalty. The prostration greeting, so cute here. What a great way to train our animals instead of just running around after food, at least to put in some positive imprints. Muslim prostration is quite similar as well. And then there's all different types of Buddhist prostration. So this is an image of a Vietnamese style prostration. So the ways that we greet people are quite different, but the meaning can be quite similar. Different Buddhist cultures prostrate in different ways, so don't think that it's right or it's wrong. But the thing is that we don't want to get the actual techniques mixed up, or we may trip over our feet and fall over. So don't worry if you're not physically up to doing prostrations, because there are prostrations of body, speech, and mind. And so we just do the level that we're up to. If you can't even physically do prostrations, it doesn't matter. Then you can imagine doing prostrations. So if you've ever kind of gone into a Buddhist center or a Gompa and kind of wondered what on earth are people doing, throwing themselves on the floor like that, it's the prostrations. And it's customary to, as a Buddhist, to prostrate when you enter a Buddhist temple and also before teachings. So the whole purpose for prostrations, it's for our own benefit. It combines body, speech, and mind. And who do we prostrate to? The three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So do the Buddhas need us to bow down? No, they don't need anything like that. The benefit comes for us. And what it does is it kind of focuses us. As we walk into the room, we become present. There are two things that we need to do to be able to reach enlightenment, to actually even just progress along our Buddhist path. One is to purify negativities, to abandon the negativities, and a very powerful way to do this is with prostrations. The other is to accumulate merit, to put fuel in the tank, as Venerable Ravina says. And a really powerful way to do that is mandala offerings. So that's why we've got these in our Dharma Toolkit, our toolkit for enlightenment. Who we prostrate to, the three jewels, the three rare sublime ones. So they're represented by the Buddha statue and the images, but that's like a placeholder. Who we're actually prostrating to is the Buddha. In fact, not just one Buddha, but all the Buddhas. The Dharma, represented by the texts. So if you're prostrating at home, you'll have Dharma books or you'll have sutras. So you have them as a physical representation. But actually what we're prostrating to is that wisdom contained in the text, the medicine of the Dharma. And then the Sangha. So when we walk into a temple, then the lineage lamas, Lama Tsongkhapa and his two disciples, the merit field, or the teacher before they sit down. So again, the teacher before they sit down is a placeholder for the actual Sangha, the Arya Sangha. And so when we're doing prostrations, there's the two things that we're doing. We're wiping away. What are we wiping away? We're wiping away our pride and our arrogance. We're wiping away all of our doubts and our procrastinations, and we're wiping away closed-mindedness. And what are we striving for? We're striving for, as we actually turn our body to prostrate towards all of these holy objects, we are striving to develop all the qualities that they embody. So it's like this ultimate vote of confidence. The Buddha can't implant all these qualities into our mind. We actually have to develop these qualities ourselves. And so the way that we do that, we have to start directing our mind towards them. So this is an incredibly quick, powerful way to remember who we are and what we're doing and who we're doing it for. So one of the main reasons for doing prostrations, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, making prostrations is an excellent antidote for slicing through false pride. So, you know, as beginners, prostration actually guards against the three faults. And I'll show you in a moment a slide of these three faults, but it's a really common way that, especially us beginners, you know, how when we get started, that we can fall into these traps and we don't know why our progress is so slow. So you might know that you have these three faults. If you've got, if you just feel like you've been plugging away at Buddhism, at Dharma, and you just don't seem to have gotten everywhere, or maybe even things got worse, or it's really difficult to integrate theory into daily life. What does it mean for me? How do I do this in my day-to-day life when I go out to work and I have a family? If we easily get disheartened, overwhelmed, if our confidence is low, we've got little confidence, or we've lost the joy in practice. So all of these things are indicators that we're suffering from these three faults. So there's a real incentive to get rid of them, and as well as the incredible long-term benefits. So these three faults, avoiding the three faults: the upside down vessel, when we're closed-minded, the contaminated vessel, so we don't put all the beautiful Dharma nectar into a grotty vessel, and the cracked vessel, in one ear, out the other. So I don't know about you guys, but I relate to all three of these. And, you know, the upside down vessel might be that you're reluctantly there at teachings, you know, someone brought you along, you're not really into it. It might be that you just simply fall asleep, you know, so the mind is closed. But a more subtle level of the upside down vessel is when we have our kind of, it's our inherited Western academic arrogance. So where we confuse knowledge with actual wisdom, with practice, with walking the talk. And so we have a really strong kind of Western materialistic arrogance where we think we know everything, we know the world. You know, it's obvious that the mind is just a byproduct of the brain, or there is nothing but materialism, all of these things that are received knowledge in our Western culture, and we don't necessarily question it. Or when we have real emotional turmoil going on and we never have the thought, has anybody else in history gone through this, and what did they do? We just go, oh, you know, woe is me. There is no point, even perhaps get suicidal. So all of the thoughts that lead to that, the emotional turmoil, they're valid. But what stops us progressing is this arrogance that doesn't think, wow, maybe other people have gone here and maybe they found a solution. So all of that's to do with the upside down vessel. So if we do prostrations, what it does is it helps us set our mind into a framework of being learners, being beginners, instead of just knowing everything, instead of having lots of intellectual smarts. So the beautiful benefit of this, when we're a learner, we become open so we can receive all the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We get more energy. We enjoy our study. We keep enjoying our Dharma practice. This is what will bring the joy back, that kind of curiosity. It's this attitude of being a learner. And instead of feeling intimidated or overwhelmed, we'll just be curious. So that's the upside down vessel. The dirty vessel or the contaminated vessel, that's when our mind, when we have our, we bring along emotional or cultural baggage and we don't know we have it. It's where we have cultural assumptions. And often it's where we try and find equivalencies, say, between Christianity and Buddhism, and try and fit them together in ways where they don't fit. So in ways to do with the good heart, of course, they fit. But in terms of the view, our worldview, they don't necessarily fit together. So if you've ever had the thought, for instance, when you've been contemplating about karma, and you've had that thought, oh, but that's not fair. You know, like a little baby dies. What did they ever do? That's not fair. So if you've had that thought, that's taking our cultural baggage of Judeo-Christian culture and fitting it into a Buddhist framework. And we don't even know we're doing it. Because, of course, karma has nothing to do with fair or unfair. It's just cause and effect. Like Venerable Thupten Chodron says, you know, it's a flower grows from a seed. It's not a reward or punishment of the seed. But we bring in this feeling of reward or punishment, and we don't know that we do it, except we have an indicator, the red flag, when we think, oh, it's not fair. So this contaminates everything, all of our practice of Buddhism. So doing prostrations purifies our emotional baggage. We can leave it at the door. when we're doing a prostration, it reaffirms we have a safe direction. Literally, you know, the Dharma, we put ourselves in that safe direction. We have a refuge. We're not lost. The cracked vessel, well, if we don't study and if we don't review our studies, we're going to forget. And what this means is, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to become fantastically, intellectually, academically knowledgeable. What we have to do is, when life throws us a curveball, when we have an emergency, we remember what to do. We remember all of our Dharma and we apply it straight away. We end up in hospital or we end up being abused, and immediately our Dharma wisdom comes up. Why doesn't this happen? Because we're a cracked vessel. It goes in one ear and out the other, and we don't give it a chance to settle. We don't integrate it. We forget everything in the heat of the moment. So doing prostrations, it combines body, speech, and mind. So it really integrates everything in there. We're held in that moment, fully present, fully engaged. We become present in the room. We remember, wow, I'm in a Dharma center. I'm in my own Gompa at home. This is rare. This is a holy place. This is where I can receive the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So before I go on, are there questions or comments? Let's see. So wave at me if you have a question or a comment, or put something into the chat. I just thought I'd give this kind of why do prostrations? It's not just some quaint Buddhist ritual, but it has this real depth to it. So, Brian, did you have a question, or are you just, sitting there? Yes. So I think you can unmute. Yeah, go for it.
Actually, hi, Miffi. I do have a comment that you were talking about, the teachings and then trying to put them into practice, like walking the walk and putting it into real life. And I think last year when we were locked down here in California, it was much easier because you were home, you were safe, you didn't really have to interact with other humans. Now, because I have 2 careers and I'm constantly dealing with people, and it's been very challenging. And sometimes it's like, okay, has all the teachings just gone out the window in this moment? But I guess it's just a work in progress. I guess you just have to get on back on the horse.
It is. It's a work in progress, and especially going back out into the world, it's been very confronting, because we assume we're as good at it as before, but actually we've forgotten how to do it. But so has everybody. So I've noticed everyone's much more fractious, much more sensitive, much more easy to become upset, myself included. And I've been going like, what? I'm not like that, but I am now, because we've lost our practice. So actually going out into the world is, it's like our Dharma boot camp. And so we have to prepare our mind to think it's going to be intense and it's going to be a Dharma boot camp. So our last class, the 4th one in this series, integrating in daily life, daily practice, we'll talk about how to do that. But so have it, however intense our outside life is, we have to make our inner life as intense, or it won't stand up to it. It's even Stevens, which is a bit shocking. So I mean, that's why Lama Zopa said, doing things like Nyungnes, which is a real Dharma boot camp, really intense. It resets the scales. It's probably more intense than going out into the world, and so then it rebalances us. But if we don't have a practice to rebalance us, we're expecting way too much of ourselves. So actually doing a daily prostration practice might be just the thing, because it is intense and focused. Really good point, Brian. Did anyone else have a comment? Or Barbara? Yeah.
Yes, I just have a question about a term that I'm not familiar with that you just used, and it's the Nunez practice.
Myungne.
Nune. Would you spell that for me?
Is, yeah, I'll talk about it at the end of the class, but it's a 2-day retreat that's very intense on Chenrezig Compassion Buddha. And there's lots of prostrations. You do 4 sessions or 3 or 4 sessions a day. And in each session, there are many, many prostrations interspersed with meditation on Chenrezig, the Buddha of Compassion. And why Nyungne is so intense is that on the second day, it's nil by mouth. So no talking, no eating, and no drinking. So it's almost like total sensory deprivation. And then you're really faced with, as it says in the prayer, the bare face of your innate mind. But before you get to that, you're faced with your own panic. And why it's so powerful is that you purify it. You do face your own panic in this controlled environment rather than out in the world. So it's an amazing, amazing practice.
Thank you.
We're going to do one online over the Christmas New Year period. So if you want to join us, I'll be putting the details up soon. Okie dokie. So we're avoiding the 3 faults. It's about time I showed you prostration. So here is just a little video I found of Lama Zopa Rinpoche before manifesting the stroke. So this Namgyalma Mantra board just arrived into the office here, and Rinpoche just spontaneously started prostrating to it. So can you see the video okay, Alexis? It's coming through?
It's coming through. Yes,
yeah,
it is.
I've just turned the sound down. So I'll play it again because you can see how this is a long prostration. You do them quite quickly. Of course, when we go into a Gompa, we wouldn't necessarily do a long prostration if there's no room. We just do the 4 places, the hands and the knees on the floor, and then bop our head down. We wouldn't necessarily put our body on the whole ground. Now, of course, as Rinpoche is doing this prostration, it's there on the bare ground. If Rinpoche was in our Gompa, you know, we'd put a beautiful cloth down and or a carpet or something like that. But this is just like the spur of the moment kind of thing. And it's so nice because it shows Rinpoche doesn't have a double standard, you know. He also puts himself on the ground spontaneously to the holy objects. He's not like holding himself high and mighty. What I also wanted to show you, so then after Rinpoche manifested the stroke, Venerable Roger wrote this amazing article called Flat on Your Face at Your Own Pace of Rinpoche doing prostrations after the stroke. So you can see here how he's holding his hands, that one of them is kind of a bit loose from the stroke. And then you can see now the beautiful brocade is there on the floor and people are holding it. So our holy guru isn't, you know, putting his face in the dirt. But what I wanted to do was just read you a little bit from this. So Venerable Roger says, Rinpoche stood with his hands in the mudra of prostration before a very large tanka of Chenrezig. He gradually leaned forward, slowly going to the ground. His stronger left arm reached for the ground. Fingers contacted the floor. Gradually, Rinpoche put weight on the arm as his body leaned forward cautiously. The left knee moved towards the ground and made contact. Now the hard part, the right arm reached out to touch the ground, with Rinpoche trying to spread his fingers so they landed open and stretched out on the floor. Gradually, Rinpoche lowered his body forward awkwardly, always the left side taking most of the weight. Watching Rinpoche making this kind of effort is very moving. I can see others moved and feeling emotional. The whole hall is very quiet, while Rinpoche is making such an effort to do a full prostration to all the Buddhas. Rinpoche is now stretched out full length on the floor, although his arm can't straighten out yet. The process is slow, but done with great, great determination. Now the really hard part. Rinpoche gets up alone as he won't accept anyone's help. Rinpoche's developed a technique as he gradually rises, where he shifts his weight over several stages, and finally to the stage where he has to take the weight from his arms and be on his legs only. This is the most difficult. It's quite tense watching this part. And I can see some students who are watching holding their breath. Rinpoche is hesitating now as he has to make a huge effort to go from kneeling to his feet. He does so and then straightens his body and is standing. His hands slowly come to his heart in the mudra of prostration in front of Chenrezig. Now, 2 more prostrations and then the climb up to the throne. It's very inspiring and moving to see Rinpoche do this with such determination. In the hospital immediately after the stroke, Rinpoche commented to His Holiness the Dalai Lama how sad he was that he couldn't do even 1 prostration anymore, or even bring both hands to the mudra of prostration at his heart to respect the 3 jewels. But now he's up to 12 long prostrations alone. That's progress. Rinpoche is going in his own way at his own pace. So, I mean, some of you may have seen this, and it's heart-stopping to watch, but it shows that the importance of doing prostrations. And hopefully we'll all get to see Rinpoche do it again in person. So, you know, to have some sense of the importance of the prostrations, then what do we actually think? Let's get into the nitty-gritty now. So one of the things is that when you bring your hands to your crown like this, you imagine the refuge object is not just one Buddha, but all the Buddhas, countless Buddhas, the entire horizon full. And as you have your hands on your crown, you think that an emanation of Shakyamuni Buddha or Vajradhara or whoever you're prostrating to, made of light, comes to the crown of your head and dissolves into you, dissolves into your crown. So you literally bring the Buddhas and the light dissolves into you. Then you touch the 3 places. So the Om, Ah, Hum. So the Om at the level of the forehead, white Om. At the level of the throat, the red Ah. And at the heart, blue Hum for the mind. And again, the 3 colored lights come as you do each one from the same place of the Buddha. So the Buddha's brow to your brow, the Buddha's throat to your throat, the Buddha's heart to your heart, blessing your 3 chakras. Then when you're going down, you recall all the steps to the path to enlightenment. And as you touch your hands, the 2 hands and the 2 knees to the ground, you think it's touching the 4 places to the ground. And what you think when you're doing that, I will never react to anger with anger. I will never react to a fight with a fight. I will never react to an insult with an insult. And I'll never react to an accusation or a criticism with accusations. So you push them down. So you stop that, you know how we have that instinctual retaliation? It's right there, you know, deep down in our DNA. So we're putting a stop to that deep down in our DNA. Then touching the forehead to the ground, as you do, you think, may I attain Buddhahood? May I attain the path of no more learning? So it's really important that you actually touch your forehead to the ground. Don't just get in like a few centimeters down there, but actually touch the forehead. And then as you stand up, may I draw all beings out of suffering. So if you have a bit of trouble standing up, that's okay, because there are many beings. They're heavy. So the more difficult it is to get up, the more excellent, because you really feel it. You feel you're bringing those sentient beings with you. So when you're doing the prostrations, you know, if you physically can do them, this is it. But if you can't physically do them, it's okay. Not all is lost, because you can stand in the prostration mudra. you can sit in the prostration mudra, and then you do the mental visualization, the mental prostration, which I'll go through in a moment. So this is basically the components. Now, a little bit about the syllables, and as you're doing these prostrations, you can be singing this wonderful mantra, which I'll sing for you. Om Namo Manjushriya Namo Sushriya Namo Ottama Shriya Soha. Do your prostration, then come back up again and do it again. So the way let's see now, just before we go on to the meanings and what's purified and how to do a physical prostration, a verbal prostration, and a mental prostration, because we're imagining these syllables and the light coming from the Buddha and blessing us, it's important to understand what exactly are seed syllables. So seed syllables, they're not just a quaint visualization like an imaginary friend. They're not some cultural relic from the past. They're actually incredibly profound. They're a synthesis of meaning. And what they're similar to is the periodic table. So I love the periodic table. The whole story of how the periodic table was brought into existence was kind of manifested from the Dharmakaya. You know, it's quite extraordinary. What it does is it breaks things down to their very essence before you get to the atomic level, before you get to the quantum field, before you get to the Dharmakaya. So the seed syllables or the periodic table, it's the Sambhogakaya aspect of the world. All of the universal elements manifesting as the periodic table. And so we're familiar, you know, with oxygen. We're familiar with, you know, hydrogen and carbon and all of these things. So then seed syllables. So what about Om? The seed syllable Om. So it's the seed of pure, completely purified form. But actually Om also includes body, speech, and mind, enlightened body, speech, and mind. A, purified speech. Hum, purified mind, Dharmakaya. Here's Tara, Trum, enlightened activity. And Hri, great compassion. So these, just like on the periodic table, you have the syllables represent the actual elements. So these syllables represent the actual Buddhas, and in fact, they are a subtle body of a Buddha. So they're the demarcation between form and mind, just like the periodic table is. And it's interesting, when we say the syllables, we actually embody the Buddha, because the air moves through our body resonates. That syllable becomes alive within us physically as well as mentally. So it's a real interesting demarcation between, you know, mind and body. So the seed of compassion, for instance, let's backtrack a little bit and go, okay, the seed syllable for water, the seed syllable for water, H2O. We all know that. It's made up of 2 parts, what is it? Hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. We can see it under a microscope. But what's really, really, really interesting about water, wherever water is, its nature is the same. Water in the atmosphere, water in a beautiful clear lake, water in a mucky puddle, water in the ocean, little drops of water, condensation. It's all by nature water. The water might be muddy, it might be polluted, but does that change the nature of the water? No, the nature is still clean and clear. All of that pollution doesn't break down the nature of the water. So that we can get. Okay, where it's really interesting then, the seed syllable of great compassion, Hri. So Hri, great compassion, what's great compassion made of? It's made of two parts, equanimity and empathy, married with responsibility. So there you go. It's like the H2O of great compassion, and there's the seed of it. And what's amazing is that great compassion, whether it exists in the mind of a Buddha or in our mind, is by nature the same. In fact, any compassion that we experience is an expression of the Buddha's compassion. Isn't that amazing? Doesn't that just blow your mind? I mean, so we might be contaminated with ignorance, we might be contaminated with bias or favoritism, but the compassion that we experience, however contaminated, is an expression of the Buddha's compassion. By nature, it can't be broken. It can be hampered, it can be veiled, but it can break through. So when we think of these seed syllables, the seed, Hri, and the deity, Chenrezig, they're by nature the same, great compassion. It's just one is, it's very, very essence, like the periodic table, and the other is the fully fledged form in all of its magnificence for the benefit of us, that we can relate to it. Because also when we're trying to relate with water, just looking at H2O doesn't tell us anything unless we know about water. We have the experience of water, but it's a placeholder, the very essence of it. So we can continue to riff on a theme here, and then we can think, oh, well, you know, the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, that's like the DNA. It's the DNA of great compassion, putting it all together. All the elements, when they're fully expressed, it's right there. Om Mani Padme Hum, the whole path to enlightenment, it's the DNA of it. So when we're doing our prostrations and we're blessing the Om and the Ah and the Hum, you know, we're blessing our enlightened potential, where we're clearing away the pollution, and we're creating the merit. So it's like clarifying that, going from the dirty, muddy, polluted water to clear water. So the dirty, muddy chakras that we have of body, speech, and mind, we're clarifying them to reflect the enlightened potential that's in every living being. Okay, so physical prostrations. Hands in the prostration mudra, and the way that a Buddhist prostrates is with the thumbs inside. So I'll just go through these and I'll show you with the camera on in a moment. So that means that even if we can't physically do the prostration, as long as our hands are in the prostration mudra, it counts. Then we touch the 5 places to the ground. So that's the forehead, the 2 hands, the 2 knees. There's the long and the short versions of the prostration. So the little video of Rinpoche that we saw, that's the long prostrations. And if you can do them, then try and do those long prostrations. And at home, try and do long prostrations if there's room in your own house. In a Gompa, when there's teachings and things, there may not be room to do the long ones, so you do the short versions. And now in time of COVID, like, we don't do prostrations at all because we're not putting our face on the ground where people are walking. So we're standing there and we're doing 3 bows. So there are different levels that we can do the prostration on. When you're going down, let's see, when you're going down, you go down slowly. And when you come up quickly. So you're coming up quickly because you don't want to stay down there in the mess of the lower realms. You want to come up and you want to bring everyone up really quickly. And if you're doing long prostrations, don't have a little rest on the ground there because you don't want to rest in the lower realms. You want to come up really quickly and rest in the upper realms. So it's all, you know, mindfulness practice like that. When you're holding your hands, the prostration mudra is with the thumbs inside, making a little table. So this is the Buddhist refuge mudra. It's really important because the Hindu one, namaste, is like this. And from according to a Buddhist, this is bereft of Dharma. So it's important that you have your thumbs inside. And you can imagine on that little table that your thumbs make is like the jewel of bodhicitta. This precious, precious jewel, and you're making a table for it. So actually, even, you know, that when the Tibetans greet each other, when they bow like this, it's kind of saying, my Buddha nature salutes your Buddha nature. Then you go down slowly, stages of the path, come up quickly. Make sure you bop your forehead on the ground, that you don't miss that part, because that's the may I become enlightened, the path of no more learning. And then when you come up, you make sure you stand all the way up. Don't just do little quickies like you might see, and people stay bent over and they just do 3 prostrations and they're all bent over, you know, double like this. It's a little bit disrespectful. It's kind of like a cultural thing where people are just trying to be all small and contained and humble, but it's actually not right. You've got to stand upright. And to show the respect, and Rinpoche really demonstrated that, of like getting up and he gets up with such enthusiasm that like everyone's there like, oh, don't tip all the way back. Then you know, so when you come up, let's be released from samsara quickly. There's incredible benefits for doing physical prostration. So one is it's very good for stomach problems. And for the curing many types of incurable disease, especially skin diseases like eczema, leprosy. Many great Nyungne practitioners cured themselves of leprosy by doing Nyungne prostrations. And also arthritis, rheumatism. So this may sound counterintuitive. You might think, how can someone with arthritis or rheumatism do this practice? But I've seen it with my own eyes. Quite a few students that come here have had an incredible healing, physical healing from doing physical prostrations. If you can't physically do them, I remember one Nyungne, a lady actually came from America to Australia to do the 16 days of Nyungne, and she had terrible arthritis. And so she had a stack of about 6 or 7 mattresses on the floor. So she'd stand, but she'd just bend from her hips down and just kind of put the top part of her body on the mattresses because she couldn't go down any further. And over the course of the 16 days, it was extraordinary. You know, every session, she was sitting opposite me, tears were rolling down her face, you know, just like washing. And the mattress levels started going down, you know, and after a week there was only 2 or 3 mattresses. And by the end of that retreat, she was doing full-length prostrations just on 1 mattress on the floor. It was intense, but it happened before my very eyes. If you're in a wheelchair, or, you know, you've only got 1 arm or whatever, and you can't actually physically prostrate, though, you just do what level that you can, and at least sit at the edge of your chair with great respect, and hands in the prostration mudra. So not just all like listening, and then imagine that you're prostrating. And the way to imagine is that you imagine your body as big as the room, as big as the gompa. So it's enormous, a giant is prostrating. Makes much, much more merit. Okay, then the verbal homage. So as we're prostrating, we can recite Oma Hum, blessing those 3 places, or we can just say to ourselves, I prostrate to the Guru, I prostrate to the Buddha, I prostrate to the Dharma, I prostrate to the Sangha. We want to say something because it purifies our speech. So if we're doing the prostration practice every day, doing the prostrations to 35 Buddhas and the medicine Buddhas, then we'd say each of the names. And that way we purify our speech by verbally reciting the names. And the actual prostration homage that you recite. So I'll sing it again. Om Namo Manjushriya, Namo Sushriya, Namo Ottama Shriya Swaha. So this mantra from the Lama Zopa Wisdom Archive, he said it's actually quite uncommon for someone to know the meaning of these mantras. If we recite this 3 times, we receive the same merit that we would receive by doing listening, reflecting, and meditation practice on the 3 baskets of the teachings. So just reciting 3 times, we receive that merit. 3 times the full-length prostrations with this mantra each day, we receive the benefit of being able to achieve the right seeing path, the wisdom directly perceiving shunyata in this lifetime. So if you've ever been bamboozled about, oh, emptiness teachings, this, that's all too hard. No, forget about it. We have to get it this lifetime, at least intellectually, if not also experientially. But reciting this mantra at the same time as doing 3 prostrations each day, receive the benefit of being able to achieve the wisdom directly perceiving shunyata in this life. Also, will not be afflicted by disease, spirit harm, or human beings. And one of the main advantages of doing prostrations with this mantra is that it increases each prostration 1,000-fold. So, you know, with the mantras, again, they're not just a matter of belief, but because I've seen that, say, for instance, with animals, when animals are sick or distressed, if you say they're there and pat them, you know, they are still distressed. The moment you start reciting mantras, they calm down. So they don't have belief. It just works and it goes straight in. And you know, Geshe Zopa said to me, of course, it goes in very deeply to animals because they don't have all the intellectual baggage that we have, doubts and la 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 and all that kind of Western arrogance. They're open. So when they hear the mantra, it goes straight to their psyche, much, much deeper than it does for humans. And the effects are pretty apparent. So that's the verbal prostration. And then the mental prostration, mental clarification. So as we're prostrating, we're recalling all the Buddha's qualities, the qualities that we want to draw close towards, that we want to actually develop in our own heart, that we want to emulate. So we think that it brings all the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It blesses our mind. Of course, when the Tibetans say mind, they put their hand on their heart. It's not head, it's not intellect, it's the whole everything, the holistic. Feel all of the colored lights flow through your body. So really imagine that your whole body, you know, glows white and then glows red and then glows blue. When you're prostrating, you can imagine that you're surrounded by all sentient beings and you're all prostrating together. Or you can imagine that you're surrounded by all your past lives and you're all prostrating simultaneously. That's so powerful. Both of them are really, really powerful. When you're doing the long prostrations and you lay your body on the ground, or if you're just imagining laying your enormous giant body on the ground, then you think that as many atoms that your body is covering, that many sentient beings are liberated from samsara. And Rinpoche said not just atoms on the surface, but atoms all the way, all the way down to the other side of the world. So you're really imagining this extraordinarily huge number. And you prostrate with the awareness, this is the way my virtuous friends and all the Buddhas are guiding me to enlightenment. Because of course we prostrate in a direction, don't we? So we're embodying that direction. So the other way that you can, when you're imagining prostrating, if you're doing a Nyungne, for instance, you and you've had the Chenrezig initiation, then you prostrate as Chenrezig. So you lessen the divine pride, but you still keep the form of the deity Chenrezig. And so then that way you make even more merit when you're prostrating. So you can prostrate, if you haven't had a initiation, you can think that not just your physical body, but your potential Buddha body is prostrating, or your body of virtue is prostrating. And that makes it much more powerful. So here's something to inspire you. If you're old like me, you would have seen this, knock on wood. And, you know, this came out in the 70s and it was a groundbreaking video. But this is, you know, all of you do your prostrations all at once together, manifesting as gods and goddesses to make that much more merit. I don't know if any of you remember this, but go look up knock on wood and it'll be there. It'll become an earworm. Amy Stewart, that's right. Brian, bingo. So just before I go on to the next bit, what questions do you have about this, the nitty gritty of the doing prostrations? Yeah, Francesca.
Actually, I've just realised I've been doing the prostration mudra wrong for the last 30 years. Almost had a freak out, and then I thought, well, my intentions were good. So I actually even prostrated like the Namaste one to His Holiness in Sydney in 1996. But nobody's ever shown me, and I never thought to ask, because what I was doing was just looking at what the next person was doing, because when you start off, you're a bit embarrassed. You don't like to be the newbie. So you go, oh, they're doing this, we'll do this, you know, sort of thing. And it's like a bit of a Chinese whisper. But anyway, I take heart that I've learned properly today. So may all my past prostrations been good. Yeah.
So it was only like when Lama Zopa Rinpoche came out to give the teachings in Bendigo, you know, so for a while it was coming every second year, and then it was a bit of a gap. And so it was on one of those that Rinpoche was talking about having the hands like this and not like Namaste. So before that, I didn't know either. I just never focused in that close. I just somehow got my hands in the vicinity of each other. You know, I didn't miss them. At least they got together, you know, a bit unco or whatever. But so then once we know, but again, Francesca, like I have seen photos of His Holiness, and like his hands might be like the thumbs a little bit like this. So it's relaxed. But they're never like that, you know, so, you know, it might be inside. Don't get too tight about it. Might be a little bit relaxed like this. There's a big variation, but that's the meaning behind it. Also, like I've seen the way, say, in Cambodia and Vietnam, they do like this. They prostrate like that. So culturally, they go like this, but Rinpoche made a point for us to put our fingers in like this, for the purpose of remembering this is a Mahayana prostration. This is the Dharma. It's different from the other religious traditions. And so there's a couple of meanings. So one is that it's the two truths, your hands together. The other that the fingers on either side are the Dharmakaya, and inside the jewel of bodhicitta is the Rupakaya. So it brings the, you know, the two bodies of a Buddha, ultimate truth and relative truth, together in your hands. Because the Dharmakaya encompasses everything. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to manifest the Rupakaya, the glorious, magnificent light body of a Buddha, so that we can help others, so they have something to relate to. Because so far, you know, how successful have I been at relating to the Dharmakaya? You know, the Rupakaya, you know, the light body of a Buddha. Well, perhaps every now and again I get a flash in my mind of Chenrezig and I feel like Chenrezig's there, but mostly I'm obscured by the ordinary view. So, you know, when we put our palms together like this, it can have this incredibly profound meaning to bring us not just present into the room, present into, oh yeah, I'm entering a holy place, a place of Dharma, but present into to what we're doing, who we're prostrating to, and the whole picture, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya, the two truths. So that's great. As Geshe-la would say, Francesca, now an obscuration has been removed. Rejoicement. Who else has a question? Oh yes, Doris, please.
Thank you, Miffi. When you're down there and you're full length, you're putting your forehead on the floor, what's happening with your arms? Because I've seen this and
Yes.
I've seen straight out. So which is the right way? Or
Yeah, so the way that Rinpoche did, he puts his hands out and then he brings his palms to the crown and then back out again. So if you're just doing 3 prostrations, it's very nice to do that. If you're doing a prostration practice where you might be prostrating for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, you can put your hands out and then just lift your fingers up. So I have a little video coming up of people doing Kora that does that. So both are acceptable. Somehow you raise your fingers because that represents the may I attain the path of no more learning. But if you do this with your elbows and you're doing long prostrations and your elbows on the ground, you're going to get bruised elbows, like it's really painful. So it's okay not to do
I guess I haven't been doing enough because I do it this way. I mean, but you know, like I'm not doing enough to, you know, get carpet burn or anything.
Yeah, so I mean, I only got sore elbows when I did the 16 days of the Nyungnes. Then I got little bruises on my elbows. And I got a blister on my forehead. It looks really weird. So, you know, but otherwise, no, I haven't had that problem either.
I've been wondering why I've got a little dent in my forehead. Maybe that's it.
Yes, that's right. It could very well be. So, you know, when I first started doing Nyungnes, I was about 16. It was the first one that I did. It was with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And it was intense. I tell you, the sessions went almost all night. And so I came back to school and I had bruised knees and a blister on my forehead. And everyone just thought it was so weird. I was never bullied again. It's like, does not compute, really. No. So Rosemary said, I heard a superstition about not spreading out your fingers when you put your hands on the ground when prostrating. Yes, Rosemary, so this is right. So again, you try and make your prostrations as nice as you can. So it's not about efficiency. It's not about flopping your body down and flapping around and, you know, da-da-da. It's actually, we're making an offering. So we try and do it really nicely and respectfully and as well as you can physically. So one of the things is to put your hands down flat like this. So if your fingers are out and you can actually put them together and you do like this, then that's kind of like to do with, oh, well, it's a little bit of causes for being reborn as a duck with webbed fingers. And if you can put your hands flat like this, but you go down with fist because it's just more comfortable or whatever, it's like causes for being reborn as a hooved creature. But don't get superstitious about this because I know one person with arthritis in her hands, the only way she can get down is like that. So that's okay. If it's going to stop you doing prostrations, that's kind of thrown out the baby with the bathwater. But once you're doing the prostrations, just a way of realizing that we can make this very nice, a really beautiful offering, and to try and do so, especially if we can. And yeah, I mean, there's heaps and heaps of stories of what happens if you prostrate wrong. You get, you know, you're born as a wealthy human, but you've got a voice like a duck or something or whatever. Or you've got some weird skin disease or all these various things, and you can get really freaked out about that. But that's a little bit more like legends, and it's mostly to do with if our attitude's wrong. So if we're just prostrating to try and make it that other people think we're a good practitioner and we look good, or that we're just like throwing ourselves down and doing the bare minimum and our mind is at the shopping center or whatever it is, like it's to do with taming our mind and bringing body, speech and mind together. So good point. I have Rosemary, during Nunes, I've read all those stories and I've just gone, oh my God. But it just shows that you can always make them nicer. And the shortcut way is to think, I'm offering this to the Buddhas. I'm offering it for all sentient beings. I'm doing it on their behalf. And so then naturally you'll just do as well as you can. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Rightio. So we kind of covered some of this. I would say that you know, we can do prostrations as a daily practice or something really intense like a pilgrimage. So no self-respecting Buddhist should have to ever go and pay money to go to the gym. You just do prostrations at home. And then that way you can start off by thinking, I'm going to get fit. I'm going to get grounded. I mean, this is what the monks and the nuns in the monasteries do. They all do prostration practice. And it is their way of getting fit, because otherwise, of course, if you're sitting there contemplating your navel all day, you're going to go a bit insane. But what you do is you adjust your motivation. You don't leave it at just getting fit. It's perfectly okay to have that be the main incentive that gets you there. And then when you're standing there in the Gompa, then you go, oh, that's right. I'm doing it for these particular purposes, to purify my negativities, to draw closer to the qualities of the Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So we can adjust our motivation. That's okay. And try and do it in words, like be really specific about it. Then it's not just a worldly activity. Like if it's a worldly activity, there's nothing wrong, but the benefit only lasts for as long as this life, or even maybe just this week. But if we're doing the mental prostration and we adjust our motivation, then the benefit lasts until we attain enlightenment. So it's big incentive to adjust our motivation. Many of the lamas, like even Geshe Tashi Sering, who taught here for about 18 years, and he's in his 80s now, I think he's a similar age to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, does 20 to 40 minutes of prostrations every day. And I've seen him at Chenrezig Institute, you know, a couple of years ago now, when he was the resident teacher there, and you know, he's very high Lama, so he acted like a high Lama, and he acted with great decorum. But during one teaching, I wasn't in the teaching, I was outside, and he had to get a different text for the teaching. So he went out of the Gompa to go up the hill to get the text, and he ran up that hill because no one was watching. And he ran back down again, and then he saw me and he went, oh, and went all like, you know, quiet and decorous. So this is how our lamas also keep their all of their energies flowing. Physical energy and spiritual energy. So as a Buddhist, if we've taken refuge, we actually have a commitment to do 3 prostrations every morning and 3 every evening to the 3 jewels of refuge. However, that commitment, whether we do, you know, just with 3 bows or we do short prostrations or long prostrations, What we can also do is a daily practice. Prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, the 7 medicine Buddhas, and the confession prayer. And so that's a really effective purification practice. And it takes about, 10 to 15 minutes to do. You can recite, you can play the sound file and recite along with it. So it's kind of nice. The sound file says the name of each Buddha 3 times in a row. So you hear the first one and you can recite the next 2. So you get 2 lots of recitations done, and you might just get 1 lot of the prostrations done. So don't try and do a prostration to each time you say the name. You just prostrate at your own pace. So I found that I would have done 35, 40 prostrations during the reciting the names and the confession prayer. So it all fits in. So you recite the names, you hear the names 3 times, you recite the names 2 times, and you do 1 lot of physical prostrations. So that's okay. If you're doing Discovering Buddhism, which is like the core beginners, in-depth beginners program of FPMT, there are the 13 units that you study, and then there is the 14th unit, which is the completion activities. And you can start that 14th unit whenever you like. You don't have to wait to the end. And part of the 14th unit is the hundreds and thousands. And the hundreds and thousands are 100,000 Vajrasattva mantras and 100,000 prostrations. So it's really good to get that started and to complete that as a practice. So you can do it all in one go. It might take a few months, or you can do it over the 2 or 3 years that it takes to complete Discovering Buddhism. But because remember, Discovering Buddhism isn't just academic, it's actual practice. So there are integration activities, and you can't actually pass the course, pass the class, unless you do these integration activities. The Nyungne retreat, that's also part of the completion activities for Discovering Buddhism. And so most centers offer Nyungnes. Now with COVID, I think some of them are online, some of them are in person. In France, they do 108 Nyungnes in a row, which is like about 8 months. It's an incredible practice, the Nyungne retreat. It's changed my life. I've been doing it since I was 16. And at least 1 each year. And then something like this, the Mount Kailash pilgrimage. So here, a photograph of Mount Kailash, the holy mountain. It looks a lot like Mount Meru because it's like a pyramid. It's got 4 sides. And so people do kora around Mount Kailash on the ground, the rocky ground like this. So there's photographers and Tibetans prostrating on the side of the road. Remember that we're doing our mental prostration. So here is, just take this down. So you'll see Rosemary and Doris, how they're doing the prostration, how they lift their hands up. So when you're doing kora, see they lift their hands, they touch their hands to the crown in the prostration mudra. When you're doing the kora or the circumambulations, each prostration that you do where you put your hands down, then you walk up to that spot. So it's kind of like, a couple of meters, do a prostration, stand back up again, walk to the spot where you put your head on the ground, do another prostration. They've got these sliders that are made of wood. They have lots of layers on the front, either a dress like this or even heavy leather aprons, like you might do, like having in a workshop of some sort. And so, if you do kora around Mount Kailash, it takes 3 or 4 months. It's really, really intense. And the lamas have joked that, you might start off quite chubby, but at the end, there's hardly anyone that finishes it, and they're all quite gaunt in the face because it's been really, really challenging. You prostrating on boulders. But I'm so inspired by that. And every time I see a picture of Mount Kailash, I just want to go there. So that's in my bucket list. Now there was something else. Oh, that's right. So then for us modern people, instead of having prostration mitts or a prostration board or whatever like that, what I found is really amazing are these prostration sliders. So these are just from a sports shop. And funnily enough, they're the seed syllable for prostration, spree. No, I'm just joking. But I told my Nyungne class that, and they think it's true. So they're fantastic because they've got really dense foam on the top, that high density foam, and then just a plastic bottom. They happen to be maroon, which is great, you know. And so you just put your hand on it and slide. So these ones are for prostrating on carpet, so they're smooth. And then you can get ones for prostrating on wood, and they've got just a very fine kind of fabric over it. And so then these are your prostration sliders. Absolutely fantastic for you know, Westerners. Then you can prostrate it whether you've got carpet, wherever you are. It's very, very simple. You don't have to necessarily make all sorts of mittens and gloves or whatever like that. So they're quite portable. Also, when you're prostrating, you can have a little thumb counter like I showed in the last course to count your prostrations if you're doing the 100,000 ones. So Rosemary says, I saw that at Mount Kailash and around the Jokang, except in Lhasa, young people use their motorbike keys or cigarette packet as a marker. Classic. Oh dear, that's really funny. Also, if you're doing a prostration practice, then make sure you have a cushion for your knees. If you're going to do Kora, you probably want like, you know, skateboarders have with their knees covered. So the benefits, even placing the palms of the hands together respectfully in front of a holy object, such as the merit field, has 8 good results. We receive a good body, which includes having perfect organs and a beautiful or handsome form of high caste, you know, high standing, which people respect and obey. We have perfect surroundings and helpers. We are able to live a life morally. You know, our circumstances permit us to live the way that we choose morally. We have devotion or faith, which is the main factor for completing the accumulation of merits. So this is, you know, without faith or devotion, we're like a vehicle without fuel. We're unable to function. Or like everything not functioning and collapsing in a city if there's no electricity. So it's the electricity, it's the fuel for us. We will have a very brave mind for the practice of Dharma and for working for other sentient beings, a mind brave in facing up to the delusions. Courage. We will be reborn as a deva or a human being. We will achieve the Arya path and we will become enlightened. So that leads us now to, where are we here? The last little part of our class, which is outrageous offerings. So actually, I'm going to put a question to you about, you know, just thinking about what is the meaning of devotion to you or showing respect to you. How can we tell if we are being respectful or are we just acting it, but not really feeling it? How can we tell if we have a sincere motivation, even if it might be a bit out of whack? How can we tell if it's contaminated? So this beautiful photo of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is one of my most favorite of all time. I mean, just looking at it pacifies the mind, doesn't it? But this is the thing about an outrageous offering. Years ago, when I was living in a share house in Melbourne, totally crazy share house. Oh my God, it was very dramatic and it was quite entertaining, quite scary sometimes. There are about 12 of us in 2 houses that had been put together. So within half a day, the kitchen was like a bomb site. There were artists, there were junkies, there were office workers, computer programmers, all together in this house in Fitzroy. And on the back of the bathroom door was this photograph. So you'd be freaking out and you'd just go to the toilet and lock yourself in the toilet and sit down, and there on the back of the door was His Holiness the Dalai Lama smiling at you. And immediately you'd be pacified and happy. So, you know, in terms of a share house of barbarians, this was a very skillful way. But what do you think? You probably, as a Buddhist, right? Are you totally scandalized? And this is what we've got to think about with devotion, isn't it? It's like that story of the two monks walking down the road, and it starts that there's all various holy objects and Buddhist statues along the side of the road, and it starts to rain. And one of the monks puts his shoes on the head of the Buddha, and the other monk is totally scandalized. What are you doing, putting your shoes on the head of the Buddha? That's the most disrespectful thing I can think of. And this monk says, but I'm protecting the Buddha from the rain. So which is it? Which is the devotion? So, as interest's sake, what was your first thought, like with having His Holiness the Dalai Lama there in the toilet? Hands up. Tell me. What did you think? Who's going to say? Oh yeah, Doris.
Well, I just thought it was funny, but then I think everything's funny, you know.
Yep, funny. That's right. Funny, tragic, funny, ha.
Yeah.
Who else? Francesca, what did you reckon?
I reckon I thought, oh, would I feel comfortable having a pee in front of him? So I went to a friend's place the other day, and she's got this huge poster of Hugh Jackman on the toilet door, and I was, I can't do this in front of him. So what am I going to do in front of His Holiness? I don't know.
That's right. What else?
I see a picture of His Holiness as being His Holiness. So, you know,
yeah, that's right. So being His Holiness the person, or His Holiness a manifestation of Chenrezig, or His Holiness our Holy Guru, His Holiness the Nobel Peace Prize winner, His Holiness the Renaissance man who leads conferences and talks on Zoom. I mean, so it's to do with our perception, isn't it? What kind of pure view? And the thing, of course, whenever we see our holy gurus in a photograph, we're in danger in seeing the ordinary view of them as being a human. They're manifesting as a human, but it's the great Vajradhara manifesting as a human, so we can relate to them. So the whole purpose they're a human is to help us relate to these enlightened qualities. So, you know, from the point of view of barbarians, I think it's very skillful to have His Holiness on the back of the toilet door. And but from the point of view of a Buddhist, it's quite convoluted, isn't it? And this was interesting because I thought at the time, oh yeah, I'm a Buddhist. But now I look back, I had Buddhist tendencies. Well, maybe not even Buddhist tendencies. Maybe I had samsaric tendencies, but I had Buddhist aspirations or yearnings, but not necessarily practicing. So once I started studying, then I realized, oh my gosh, that's so incredibly disrespectful. But then you come out the other end and you go, well, actually going to the toilet isn't a bad thing. It's a really important thing. If we can't do it, we die. It's just, again, our grasping at inherence that sees it as rude or terrible, hides it away. We can make going to the toilet using thought transformation a way of purifying. And in fact, that's what was happening. We're going to the... So the thing is, with this kind of question, I asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche, how can you tell if when you're on the Dharma path, you're really sincere and you're totally into what you're doing, so you're really trying to go with it, how can you tell if you're on the right track or if you're totally insane? Like this really happens when you really enter into Dharma practice and you're going through a process, like Francesca, like you're saying, you're really going through it. So you're being sincere. How do you know you're on the right track or that you're just totally deluded? And so Rinpoche gave me this amazing answer. And this is the way to negotiate our way through outrageous offerings. So one is, everything is an expression of the Dharmakaya. This blows my mind, because basically this says everything is by nature pure, an expression of the Dharmakaya. It's just our grasping at inherence, grasping at permanence, all of that contaminates it. And then, so that's the ultimate truth. On the relative level, check with the Dharma. So nice, such a balanced way to answer that question and to tell is this a respectful or disrespectful offering? So how do we check with the Dharma? Find a scriptural reference. So with whatever in our practice, you find a scriptural reference to back it up. And that's why there are so many amazing stories. And that's why there's that story of the monk putting the shoes on the head of the Buddha. So that we have scriptural references to gauge by. Use your logic, logical reasoning, work it out. And part of that is to figure out what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to adopt? What are we trying to abandon? Who are we doing it for? Putting everything into context. So reasoning things out. Check with your own experience. Did it work? So also, there's no inherently right or wrong answer. So at the time, yes, it worked. How could it not? But now it wouldn't work for me because my whole process has changed. But at the time, that was pretty much my only way of getting any sanity, which says how difficult it is to live as a barbarian. Is it respectful, and what's the context? So what makes it respectful isn't the physical action. What makes it respectful is what's happening in the heart. So putting shoes on the Buddha's head to protect the Buddha from the rain. Putting the Dalai Lama in the toilet to protect us from our unruly minds. Putting your hands together in prostration because you're prostrating. All of that. The most important thing is the mind, and then the context over time changes. And does it definitely benefit? So the benefit that we want is a long-term benefit, not just a short, nicey nice benefit. So the long-term benefit, remember, many times the lamas will say that with students that are really arrogant and hard-headed and nothing can get in, sometimes the only way to make the connection is something quite dramatic. And so they'll do something that will make the student really angry. And then the connection is made. And so this also happened with one of the stories of the Buddha. So he managed to make a connection with everyone in the village, and he hooked them with his hook of compassion, and they were all meditating and studying and becoming better human beings, except for one lady, and she was like, there's no way I'm talking to that fella, like get away from me, I'm not interested. So what he'd do is every day he'd walk through her vegetable garden and ruin her vegetables, and she'd come out, she'd go, wow, how very dare you. And that made the karmic connection. So then I'm not sure if it was in that very lifetime that she then noticed the Buddha and was able to hear what he was saying, or if it was in a future lifetime. But it's skillful means. So for us too, it's a skillful means of how our gurus manifest to help us. So of course, what would be better actually would be to actually just do the practice that you do when you go to the toilet, which is offer all of your physical waste to Vajradhaka, who uses it as fuel and burns it up. There's nothing that he wants more than your negativities. So that's wonderful. Oh, it's great. It's like, get rid of them all. How brilliant could it be? So you offer your physical waste to the jaws of death below. And Vajradhaka is extremely blissful and satisfied. So when we can do our dedication in a moment, I just thought I'd show this photograph too of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You know, if it's good enough for His Holiness, it's good enough for us. So his wonderful attendants putting down the special cloth for His Holiness to prostrate on. That's at the teachings. But here is His Holiness in his own room with his little prostration mitts, also doing the prostration practice. So we've got time for just a couple of questions. If you have any last questions or comments at all about devotion, prostrations, the practice. Clear? Oh, yeah.
I had a question about a while back. If that was the long Vajrasattva mantras that you were talking about, I think when you were talking about the Buddhist.
Yes, so the hundreds and thousands for discovering Buddhism. So there's a few things Rinpoche wants us to do. The 100,000 Vajrasattvas, yes, the long mantra, the 100-syllable mantra. I think you can do it either as a lower tantra or highest yoga tantra. You don't have to do it in one go. If you just do some every day, and then you can do a retreat here or there. So we just had Rachel do 2 days over the long weekend, Vajrasattva long retreat, just to kind of have a nice immersion in it. The 100,000 prostrations, again, when you start them, it's not just doing the prostrations, but you've got to take refuge and generate bodhicitta and have the merit field, and then do your prostrations and the confession prayer, and you count those, and then you dedicate. And you're supposed to do them each day, so you can't kind of break. So I've had several, it's a bit like getting your license, right? I've had several attempts at doing my 100,000 prostrations. And so I got up to about, I don't know, 40,000 prostrations every day. I was really diligent prostrating every day. Was in the other center in Newmarket. And then one day, Geshe Tashi Sering and his attendants, they were giving a weekend course. And so they stayed overnight at the center, and all the nuns, the attendants, slept in the Gompa. And so I didn't have my autopilot of going to the Gompa to do my prostrations. And I woke up the next morning with Geshe there in the house going, oh no, I forgot to do them. Reset back to zero. But of course, it's not, oh no, it's, oh, fantastic, I get to do more prostrations, because it's not about the number, is it? So it really showed to me just how tenuous our practice is. You know, and any kind of what's called wrathful teaching from the guru like that, any experience that we have that is unpleasant is a wrathful teaching. And so, of course, that comes from not showing respect in the past. So then now we have the connection with the guru, but it's a little difficult. Anyway, so I had to start again at zero. That's okay. I eventually got there, you know, chugga, chugga, chug. So there's a couple of other of the Discovering Buddhism, what are they, completion activities. So doing a Nyungne and leading others in Nyungne is part of it. So important, because Nyungne really cuts through our civilized veneer to just who we are, where we're up to now. It's very sobering. It's a practice of humility and of generating compassion for others that's genuine, and a real genuine sense of renunciation that samsara is no good. The down is no good, obviously, but the up is no good either. So you really get to experience this. And which is why Lama Zopa said, you know, it's so important for, especially for Westerners to do, and very easy to do because it only takes 2 days. So that's something that we do as often as you can, you know, at least once or twice a year. And then there's doing pilgrimage. And of course, doing pilgrimage, you do prostrations and the Heart Sutra at each place as a minimum. Whether you physically go on pilgrimage or whether you set up the pilgrimage in your own gompa with little pictures, either way, it's counted as okay. I'm sure there's a few other completion activities, but I can't remember them at the moment. So in summary, you know, please, when you do prostrations, wait till you're ready, till you figured out why you're doing the prostrations, what it means. It's usual for a Buddhist to do prostrations, so no one's going to think that you're weird. It is a done thing. On the other hand, don't feel pressured. Many people who come here to Langri Tampa Center are new. They don't even know what a prostration is or what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is. Don't feel that you have to do it just because everybody else is. It took Eddie, who leads Discovering Buddhism here, it took him about 5 years before he did prostrations, because he said, I'm not doing anything superstitious just because other people are. I want to know what I'm doing before I do it. So he didn't do them. And I think it's good to be authentic like that. But at the very least, what I encourage people to do is every time you go into your own meditation room or a gompa, to stop and pause and at least bow, to become present, and to get all of body, speech, and mind together, and to show some kind of respect to those amazing holy objects there, just as a start. And everybody's fine with that. You go in and you just do a little bow, and then that's enough to get started. So let's dedicate that by us honoring the 3 jewels, showing our respect to the placeholders out there, but actually honoring the 3 rare sublime ones in our heart, actually developing devotion. May we too become a Buddha jewel, a Dharma jewel, and a Sangha jewel for the benefit of all sentient beings. So thank you so much for coming along, and I hope to see you next week. Next week is on mudras. So what the mudras are, how to do them, what they mean, who can do them, and some stories. Thank you so much.